First time I read the script, I remember reading the Lex scenes and being like, these are interesting. I might actually be better at Lex. And so, I love comic book movies. You know, I grew up watching the original X-Men movies. So there was like this really crazy moment when we were shooting X-Men Days of Future Past where I was in the Cerebro corridor.
Right.
Yes, from Tokyo this morning. So if my brain isn't at full speed, I apologize in advance. No, sorry.
Well, we can tell the audience that the last 10 minutes of the conversation will be dedicated to them. So prepare your best questions and hold your hand up high so I can see you at the end of it. But we're going to start with the chat. And from the beginning, actually, is it a cute story? Or is it true that your siblings have introduced you to the art of performing? And did this mean that play dates in your house were all about singing and dancing and all these things when the friends came up?
There was a lot of musical theatre in our house growing up. My mum and my sisters loved watching like the Cats and Chorus Lines and all those sorts of shows on repeat. I kind of started to slightly resent them and pretend I didn't like them at a young age. But yeah,
Like Cats.
the original was like production of like the stage video of filming of that. But then my older brother was into acting. My older sister was into a lot of singing and dancing. So their passion for it, I always think of it as like when an older sibling plays a sport and then the younger siblings end up following in their footsteps. My mom would always say like, well, you know, if your sister's in dance class or doing acting classes, then you can't just sit in the car and wait. You're going to do it too. And so it wasn't something that I drove. It wasn't something that I woke up one morning and said, oh, I have this burning need to act. But it was something that I enjoyed and did from a young age, and then got very fortunate to continue doing.
So when did you feel like you fell in love with acting? Was there a moment?
I remember the first audition for a job that I got when I was 5 years old. It was a movie called Intimate Relations, where I was playing Julie Walters' grandson. And in the audition, they said, sit under the table and pretend you're stuffing your face with cake. And I was like, this is easy. I can do this.
Acting.
Yeah. And I did it, and I got the part. So that was like one of my first early memories of acting or pretending, I suppose. And I should manage to keep doing it. It's wonderful because it is that childlike imagination and playfulness that you just kind of, as an adult, get to continue using.
And it's crazy because you're so young, but that was 30 years ago. And we can applaud. He's been like doing this for 30 years.
I'm so old.
You absolutely aren't. You just started so young. And did that change anything in the normalcy of growing up? How did the young performer in you inform the actor you feel you are today?
I think the thing that I remember clearly that probably informed me as an actor, but also just as a person, was this thing that I was fortunate, About a Boy we filmed when I was 11. And that was, a big moment, being in a movie with Hugh Grant and a Nick Hornby adaptation with the Once Brothers directing. That was kind of the big moment. That then there was like this fear set in after that, because everyone then, even as a kid, everyone talks to you about how child actors stop working, their life goes off the rails, and it doesn't work out as an adult. So you have this kind of fear of what's to come. But even then, I knew I wanted to continue doing it, but was also slightly like guarded about it, I suppose, because I was like, there's a good chance this doesn't work out. Luckily, my parents and my family were wonderful in the sense of like, they sent me into normal school and kind of kept life around acting as regular as possible. So there was never like this pressure to succeed, like you have to do this. So that was good.
But About a Boy was an amazingly successful film, seen all over the world. So was it a game changer in a way? I mean, you were so young in it. How was the experience of making it? I was watching that YouTube video of you and him like a couple of years back, reminiscing about it. So you've kept the bond.
Yeah, I love Hugh. He's the best, and such a wonderful example at a young age of how to behave and how to be gracious and kind and hardworking on set. So he was a great leader to kind of distill that in me. And also Toni Collette, who I luckily got to do another movie with. She played my mum in that, and then we did a movie 2 years ago called Juror Number 2.
No, Clint Eastwood.
The Clint Eastwood directed, yeah. So it was lovely to reunite with her. These people that like have known me since I was a kid, but now I'm like a completely different person now. But now I get to like know them again as an adult, as more contemporaries, which is really special.
And the experience of making About a Boy, did you feel was transforming in any way? Yeah, you were a kid. It's like
you know
you just
what,
feel
I was like excited that the director's got me a PS2. That's why I want to play the PlayStation. And then like I'm like in the stage that was next to the stage we were filming on, me and the third assistant director would run in there and play cricket in between setups. So, and then they'd get upset with me because I'd really be playing like as hard as I could, and I'd get all sweaty. Then I'd go back to set, and they'd be like, "Oh, we got to dry his hair," because he was playing next. So it was playtime for me, and that's what I feel like acting should be. You know, it's a job. There's a lot of responsibilities, but you've got to keep that playfulness.
Very true. Well, after that, was there hesitation about what you would do next? As you said, were you like thinking about it? How do I pave my career? Or were you just scared that it would stop?
I wasn't thinking like, oh, how can I pave my career? I was thinking like, well, this could be all downhill from here. But luckily I got some really great agents, and they kind of guided me from there in a wonderful way with good opportunities that kind of allowed me to progress, I guess.
And one of those opportunities was the television series Skins, which, I lived in the UK. I know how big it was, and it really engaged the audience and engaged the youth. I mean, it must have been the kind of role where people were starting to stop you on the street to speak about the character. Did you identify with him in any way?
Did I identify with him? I mean, I identified,
Tony Stoneham.
He was such a piece of work. But you spoke with Daniel Kaluuya was here the other night as well,
yes.
Right? So that was one of the wonderful things about Skins. I made some of my best friends for life from that show. And I think what's really special about it was the casting process that they did. It wasn't restricted. They went into schools and found talent that wouldn't have been found otherwise, and that gave the show a really authentic, real feel. And we all were like 16, 17 years old, living away from home for the first time in Bristol. And we kind of, we grew up. It was a bit of no one expected that show to kind of take off the way it did. It was the first drama that was made for E4, the channel. So it was, the scripts were great, and it was a good team, but no one expected it to kind of become the phenomenon it did, I don't think. But I think that was also what was unique about it, because we all went in just kind of with no expectations. Yeah, we were just having fun, and it was kind of chaotic and crazy, and we grew up together. So a really special experience.
For sure. I really love that series. It's peculiar, and this is what forms you as an actor as well. So then you came back to the movies, and you had done some blockbusters at the time, but X-Men was a different beast, pun intended.
Yeah, well, you know what it was? I think one of the things that led to that was Tom Ford's first movie.
Yes, of course.
A Single Man. And then I was actually cast in Mad Max. But we had to delay because of the filming, because we were meant to shoot in Australia, but then we had to move to Namibia because the desert was turned into a flower garden. So then I called my agents and I said, I need a job. Mad Max isn't shooting. And they said, oh, there's interest for you in Beast and X-Men. So I had to do an audition for that in Australia. The next day I put myself on tape and sent it. And they said, yeah, jump on a plane for a screen test. And it all worked out. And a wonderful cat. I mean, I love comic book movies. I grew up watching the original X-Men movies.
Yeah.
So there was like this really crazy moment when we were shooting X-Men Days of Future Past, where I was in the Cerebro corridor with James McAvoy playing Xavier, and then looked over and it was Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, and I was like, this is the guy that I was watching play Wolverine when I was 11 years old, and now I'm standing next to him in the scene. It was really like out of the body, like trippy, where I was like, what's going on?
It's the multiverse.
Yeah, it was really bizarre. I was like, oh, I'm reliving my childhood, but in real time.
But those movies are such huge blockbusters. They draw a certain attention from fans that you'd probably not had before.
Well, for those ones, I was mostly covered in blue fur. So it wasn't like walking down the street, people were like, hey, there's that guy. But the comic fans are really, really supportive and caring, and they're passionate you know, the stories they want to tell, the arcs of those characters. They really appreciate when you put in the research and do the work to try and elevate the material from the script.
Well, talking about elevated material, Mad Max Fury Road finally, saw the light after so many years of being delayed, and it was such a sensational opening at the Cannes Film Festival. And what a great movie! And George Miller and his vision and it's an experience making those films. Do you agree? I mean, it's something else.
It was the strangest experience, right from like the audition. There was one scene that we did, but it was a 4-hour audition. And at first we were just playing games. It was just like observation games where me and the actress I was working with had to talk about what we saw in the other one. And then we had to do like these physical activities and like repetitive tasks. It was like theater training. And I left the audition and I was like, even if I don't get this movie, that's been one of the best experiences I've had as an actor. So it was a really positive thing right from the beginning with George. And he's just so creative and intelligent. And what he bases those Mad Max stories in, the history and the future history, I suppose, of humanity and how we're developing. It's wonderful to go into those worlds with him. But it's also like intense. We were 7 months in Namibia, in the desert. All practical, really. So all the, you couldn't hear anything. They'd give the signal to start up the engines in the vehicles and we'd just take off for 20, 30 minutes across the desert filming. And occasionally you'd see a camera fly by on another truck or something, but you'd just be like doing scenes, not really hearing anything, wondering what was happening. But George has got such a wonderful vision. It wasn't a script. It was like a comic book. Yeah. He's wonderful. One of the brilliant things, a week or two into filming, I was completely in awe of the whole experience. And I said to George, I was like, you've been wanting to make this movie for 17 years. How do you feel now you're here? This is incredible. And he was like, it's very special to be here, but at the same time, I have to kind of remain objective and not get carried away with my love for the projects, because the people that go to the theater and pay their money to come watch it in 2 years' time, they're not coming in with this investment in the story. You still need to create that for them, which I thought was a really smart approach because that's something that I think when you care and love something, it's easy for you to get carried away with it.
Oh, of course. And you had to have a big physical commitment also to the role. I mean, the character and the thinness of him and, the physicality came with that role on top of the emotional involvement.
Yeah. So George asked me to get thin because he's meant to be dying on the day that you're meeting in the movie. And obviously in that world, there's not much food anyway. So he was like, lose as much weight as you can. So I lost, I think, 20 pounds. I lost a lot. I didn't realize how much I'd lost until I saw photos afterwards in hindsight.
And your parents were warning you.
No, I was very thin. But I was also like a sadist about it. I would watch, do you know this cooking show Chopped? Mm-hmm. I would watch Chopped, a cooking show, whilst I jumped rope in the evening. I'd just watch episodes of that, jumping rope, and not eat very much. Yeah.
Is that why after that you got interested in indie cinema? It was like, for a while, no more blockbusters.
Yeah, no, I just love the varying scale.
It revitalizes an actor.
Yeah, it's fun with different processes as well, because the big movies, they're such a spectacle, and it's such a different time commitment, etc. And it's nice to go and then do the opposite, where it's like just really fast shooting and lots of improvisation and kind of creativity in a very different way.
Then came the favorite. Yorgos Lanthimos is also such a quirky, original, amazing director. How do you feel when you get often scripts like that, where it's truly nothing like you've read before?
Oh, I mean, so Tony McNamara, the writer of The Favourite and The Great, and an upcoming show I'm doing called Mosquito, he's just my favourite playwright and writer. His dialogue is so unique and unexpected. In each scene you read and you go, oh, this is the perfect framework for me to now just go off and have fun and explore within the scene. But interestingly, that audition for The Favourite with Yorgos was the closest I've been to the audition with George, where the casting director, before we started, she was like, just so you know, Yorgos might ask you to do some strange things. I was like, oh no, here we go. And just go with it. And he was like, hey, whenever you're not talking, hum, and then follow imaginary beams of energy around the room, and now dance, and all these things. And it was like, you're doing the scene, but you're also doing all these other mental gymnastics. and physical gymnastics, I suppose. But there's two similarities between those two guys as a director, which I really appreciated.
And now it's the Great is a very successful TV series, and it was also a different departure for you as a character, a different tone of a series, got you loads of award nominations. How much does it mean to you, basically, when every project is, set in a completely different setting of what you're used to?
That's what I love about acting. I guess it's like there's that kind of quote. I think it's, if you read 1,000 books, you live 1,000 lives. Mm-hmm. And I feel like with acting, there's this wonderful thing that you get to inhabit and experience 1,000 different lives through your career. If you're lucky, you get to, go to different times in history or in the future. You get to kind of completely try and rewire your brain. And that's what's really fun. It really feels like you're experiencing life, to its fullest.
How's the experience doing this with Elle Fanning, who herself is in a completely different element?
Elle is glorious. She's such a wonderful actress, and we have a very similar work ethic and approach, so we get along really well.
And you both started so young as well.
Yeah, both child actors, which I think is probably something similar. We're both kind of competitive. We both kind of view it as being an athlete in some ways, being an actor. There's lots of similarities, I think. And so, really special because we did a movie together called Young Ones as well before that. So it's been wonderful to watch her grow as an actress, and she just got nominated for a Golden Globe today with Sentimental Value, which I'm very proud of her for that. So, I love working with her.
This year you played in a small movie called Superman. Has anyone seen Superman? These films are so small, no one understands them, it's just... I felt when I was watching you be Lex Luthor that you had this delicious pleasure into infusing, the right dose of evilness into him, but also you engage the audience. The audience is really wondering what his motivations are in this one. It's not like pure villain. So tell us how you constructed the character, and there's so many references you can have for Lex Luthor from the comics and from old books, etc. How did you do your research? How did you narrow your own vision of him?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, because originally I auditioned for Superman. And it was interesting because the first time I read the script, I remember reading the Lex scenes and being like, these are interesting. And I might actually be better than Lex in Superman. But I was like, well, don't say that to anyone now whilst you're auditioning for Superman. And then after the screen tests, James called me and he said, how would you feel about playing Lex? And instantly my brain was like, yes, that's the character you should and need to be playing, because there were just moments in the dialogue and in the script where I was like, it's really delicious, like the twists and turns of the character. And like you say, he is definitely very much the villain of that story. But at the same time, there's this thing where if you unpack a little bit and kind of piece together what his motivations are, you can go, there's a very different angle to this that could make sense. Even though he's misguided and his approach is off and it's terrible, there's things in there where you go, okay, you can understand it in your brain and not have empathy, but understanding. So there's a really fun character to play in that sense. And James just wrote a wonderful script, and he's such a fun director to work with. I really trusted him because, we went into the rehearsals and he'd say, like, this isn't working, let's try this, let's do that. And so it was explorative in that sense of like developing the character together. I think in terms of, the script was obviously massive impact for what the approach would be, but also there was a comic called Luthor, Man of Steel, which was one that really resonated with me in terms of the psyche of Lex and why he feels the way he does about Superman. So that was something that there was a few lines of dialogue from that became my mantra, and I would repeat them to myself, partly to get into the accent, but partly to get into the headspace of Lex.
Did you watch Superman growing up? Was it part of your comic book superhero type of films that you'd watch, or not at all?
I'd seen the original Christopher Reeves movie, and one of the things they did that was really awesome was the Christopher Reeves documentary. They screened for us about a week before we started filming. So that was a wonderful experience to all get to see that, to see, the legacy of his life, the legacy of that character. It was a really special thing to kind of understand the weight and the whiteness, I suppose, of carrying on that torch and continuing to tell those stories. because he was such a special, incredible actor in Man. So, but yeah, I'd seen the originals, and Gene Hackman had played Lex, and he's one of my favorite actors of all time. So, was excited to take the character on.
Yeah, and those films have legacy, they have endurance. I mean, it's extraordinary how audiences are still engaged with the same characters after decades and decades. Are you able to gauge what, makes the audience so fascinated by superhero films?
I think it's the magic of them. It's the magic of, for me, it was seeing the Lord of the Rings movies, but the movies that I saw when I was like 10 or 11 in theaters, they came out. And I was just completely transported. And that was the magic of cinema for me, where I was like, oh my gosh, I would look forward to the next year, the next one coming out. That was my big event of the year. So I think it's that. It's when you're a kid and you go to the cinema and have that experience, which just completely shows you a different world and opens your brain up to storytelling on that level. It's really special.
Films are special, directors are special. How much do you learn every time? At this stage, I'm going to name Eastwood and Yorgos Lanthimos and Miller and Matthew Vaughn, Gore Verbinski, James Gunn. So many directors with such a strong vision you've worked with. How did each one of them make you the actor you are today?
It's crazy because they all work so differently.
Yes, especially those names,
Yeah, for instance, I went kind of from shooting Nosferatu with Robert Eggers, we shot on film, and everything had to be kind of, it's long single takes, so everything has to be right. So you end up doing sometimes, 30 takes of a scene just to make sure the shot is completely right. I went from that, which I loved, because I think Robert's one of the greatest directors alive, and then went from that to working with Clint Eastwood.
One take.
One take, and he just sits there and goes, whenever you're ready. Stop. 3, that's enough.
It doesn't say action, right?
Doesn't say action, doesn't it? They're like, good, and they're like, and everyone on his team he's worked with for 30 years, and they're like, if Clint's happy, you move on, and that's it. And there's something about, he's a jazz musician as well, and there's something about how he creates that's wonderful as well, because you go, oh, he's just letting the story play out and the moments be real. And he's not forcing anything upon the audience or trying to provoke anything. And it's so that's what's wonderful for me as an actor, is I get to go to these different director sets, and it means that I'm always changing how I'm working, also always learning. And that's what I love about this career, is I don't think I'm ever going to get tired of it, because there's always going to be a different character, there's always going to be a different experience, and that's something that I look forward to.
Was there an experience in film that really, really taught you, that you felt like you came out of different?
I felt like working with Robert Eggers was a big thing as an actor, performance-wise, because I love the performances in his movies, and he's so specific. You have to be really, really disciplined and focused, and it's intense. And that was something that I came out of it, and there would be nights when I'd go home at the end of the day, and I'd say to my wife, I'd be like, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can do what he needs me to do. And so to complete that and really invest in it, and to have his faith in me, that was something where I came out of that. I was like, right, if I can do that with him, I think I can do most things as an actor, hopefully.
I think you can. And you've worked with such a neglected bunch of actors as well. So are you able to gauge what you love most about actors, about the collective experience of acting?
They're playful. They're fun. Yeah. You're speaking to Anthony Hopkins in a couple of days. He's one of the most fun people I've ever been with. We'd do rehearsals on the movie that I did with him, and he'd come up to me afterwards, he'd go, you're not actually going to do it like that, are you? And he's like, come on, butch it up a little bit, butch it up. And then we're
quietly directing you.
Yeah, and he's always just joking and playing around. And then there was a scene where he was doing a monologue, and it was like, I don't know, a 2-page scene, but suddenly he riffed and improvised for like 7 minutes about his character's childhood and all this history that he had obviously worked on for the character. And I was sitting there, and I was like, wow, Anthony Hopkins is just delivering a one-off improvised monologue to me right now. This is a surreal, once-in-a-lifetime experience. So there's that. And also, I think being an actor, it's a very vulnerable situation to be in. Like, you fail a lot. And it's scary. So it's like anyone who's willing to go out there and put themselves out, I think that's, you could appreciate that, and there's you share that when you're on set with people because you want the best for each other and you want everyone to succeed. So it's a kind of a support network, I suppose, as well.
What about the likes of Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen? Do you feel like the veteran ones, they've got so much experience that they enjoy themselves even more?
Yeah, I think once you've got a certain, I think when you're younger as an actor, you're still trying to prove yourself. You're trying to prove it to yourself. You're trying to prove things to the world. At a certain point, I think actors know that they've done it. They can do it. They know it.
They're good.
And then they're having fun. And that's what's brilliant to be around. Because it's like Samuel L. Jackson. He's having fun every day on set. He's relaxed. And he said that to me. He was like, that's like one of the most important things. He was like, be relaxed, which is difficult to do, surprisingly. But yeah, if you can do that, then you're doing good.
But we'll see another 30 years for you, and then you may be very relaxed.
Maybe. Or I'll always be just a neurotic mess.
I think that's one of the qualities of an actor, right? Away from acting, tell us about your other passion, racing.
Yeah. I've been learning to race with the Ferrari Challenge race series. So I've been doing it for 4 years now. I kind of started through their driving scheme, and I think I've got my first proper race in March. I've done like the time attack where you try and set the fastest lap time, but this will be an actual race with the other cars for position. And it's interesting. I find it very similar to acting in some ways. It's like an intense focus, but also this kind of flow state where it's like input output. You're just focusing on like what you need to look at, what's happening, and then what you need to do to. And so they're very similar in many ways. Like acting, you're looking at the other person in the scene or whatever it is, observing, and then hopefully the output comes naturally. So there's a lot of similarities, but it's also terrifying. I had my first crash at Daytona this year.
Terrifying for your wife and children.
Yes. Yeah. That was a weird feeling because also, as I was spinning across the track, all I could remember thinking was, oh, this is what it feels like. You know, when you haven't experienced something before and then it's happening and it's quick, but it's happening and you're like, oh, this is it. And it's not like necessarily like total fear, dude. It's like, huh. And then because you can't imagine what that feels like. So then when it happens, you go, oh, that's it. That's the feeling. Interesting.
Well, I'm glad you're okay.
Thanks.
And hopefully in your future there'll be a car racing movie so you can do it.
I would love that. I got to watch the F1 movie with my son. That was like one of the first movies we watched together, just father and son, and loved it. And it was so good to share that with him. And then I took him go-karting like a few weeks after that. Just as we were about to walk out the door, he goes, wait. And he goes running off, and I'm like, where's he going? And then he comes back, and I'm like, well, where'd you go? What happened? What is it? And he showed me he had 2 playing cards. And I don't know if you remember in that movie, Brad Pitt's character has like his lucky playing card for whenever he drives. So my son was like, oh, I need my playing cards to be like Brad at F1.
That's so cool. The last question is about your bucket list, what you would love to still do, a genre you would love to still be part of.
Well, I want to do a Western.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Working with Clint, I went back and watched all of his classic movies. One of my all-time favorite movies is Unforgiven. I think it's a masterpiece. So, I'm really at some point going to do a Western. That's
a Western car racing fusion.
Yes. If anyone's got any scripts for one of those.
Set in the galaxy.
Why not?
That's what's beautiful about movies. It's all about making your imagination. We can open it to the fans. Look at that. Everybody's so excited. The lady here, because I can see you. Yes, she's here. It's more challenging than evening ones because I can't see everybody that well. There you go.
Hi, Sabra from the upcoming Nicholas. I wanted to ask you, you got a new project coming up, Cry to Heaven. It's going to be directed by Tom Ford, and it's going to start in London and Rome, I think in January, right? I wanted to ask you, what's your usual preparation for a new film? And how, like, what's the general preparation, but also how do you interact in terms of chemistry with your colleagues, and what the preparation in advance that you do with your director as well?
Yeah, we start shooting next year for that. I'm really looking forward to being back on set with Tom. He's a wonderful director to work with. Just his attention to detail, his understanding of the emotions of the characters, and he's written a really beautiful script. And it's a wonderful cast, so I'm really looking forward to working with everyone on that. In terms of preparation, it always varies. It's partly based on the time frame or the skill set that you might need. So, for instance, working with Yorgos, I was lucky we had 2 weeks where all the cast were in rehearsals every day, and it was like rehearsing, for a play. But there's other times when you turn up and it's like, hey, you've got to start shooting tomorrow, and you've hopefully done enough work on your own, but you just got to hit the ground running. Justin Kurzel was a wonderful director for preparation. He sent through like a manifesto for me of like things to read, things to watch for the character, and even things to do. The movie that we made together, I didn't know this till recently, but one of the tasks he gave Jude Law was to follow me. Because Jude Law was playing the police officer who was tracking me in the movie. So when I was just mooching around, going to the supermarket and going to get my spray tan, because I had a spray tan in that movie, Jude Law was following me for the whole day, and I had no idea. But that was his thing that Justin had told him to do. He'd been following me for the whole day, and I never knew. I never knew until we were doing press for the movie. So yeah, the prep always varies. I like when there's a new skill to learn, because that's just something I like to do anyway. Or like a physical thing to transform a little bit, so you have an exterior that changes, if it is shaving your head or whatever it is physically that just makes you feel different. And then hopefully reading a lot, trying to understand, what the character might read or what they might do and whatever it is, just kind of trying to get anything that's tangible to hang on to make it feel real. Because that's the thing, you're just trying to make it feel real to you, really.
Yeah, I think he's the gentleman in my second.
Can you hear me?
It's okay, he's coming.
So first, before I ask the question, we met in Vegas in a hotel during the Mayweather and McGregor fight. And
No, we didn't.
Yes, no.
No, we didn't.
Yes, it was in an elevator. And so we talked for about 5 minutes. Anyway, flashback. So my question is, you're a genre kid. You clearly love genre, cinema, doing genre projects. What is it about it that sandbox that you love and that you gravitate towards?
It's a good, because I really don't feel like I do. Or I guess I don't really view them as genre. I don't know. I am as a fan, into fantasy and all those things. But when I look at the stories, I don't know, or what the acting and what the emotions are behind it, I don't look at it on the genre level, I suppose, which is strange. But I think there is something about being able to remove things slightly from reality that makes it more palatable in the message or what the story is you're trying to say, because it's slightly, for an audience member, transports you, it kind of affects you actually more. Or for instance, when you're doing a historical piece that's actually, a commentary on modern day politics or whatever, because it's once removed, you can kind of say the same things without it being obvious. So I think there's something about that I really like with fantasy elements or genre pieces, where it's you can tell, a relationship drama about an abusive boss, but it could be set in this very bizarre world where the boss is Dracula. And so it makes a fun thing where everyone goes, oh, I have that at work. Not to this scale, but it's an enjoyable thing, but also actually you go, oh, walk away from it, hopefully at the end you go, oh, I actually had something real to say underneath it.
Let's go to the back, the lady in the back, in the grayish. Yeah, here, please.
Hi, hello. My name is Iman. First of all, happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
Also, I wanted to ask, who is a director you work with, where you would never say no to, and why?
You know, you spoke to Sean Baker yesterday.
I didn't do the
you-
conversation, but he was here.
Yeah, Sean, I think, is a wonderful director. You know, Florida Project, Red Rocket, obviously, and more. I think he's making really special movies. There's so many. Obviously, like Martin Scorsese. There, like, you know, you grow up watching his movies. There's so many, and I've been fortunate. Like Clint Eastwood was one that I was like, don't need to read the script,
Take
whatever
notes.
it is, like whatever it is, just to have that experience with Clint, I'll do it. So there's a few. Quentin Tarantino would be one, I suppose. Who else would they go?
Relax.
Christopher Nolan.
Oh, Nolan. Yeah, he's pretty good.
He's okay.
I wouldn't say no.
Long career ahead of you. Let's put it out in the universe. The gentleman here in the black t-shirt.
Hey, Nicholas. Lovely meeting you. I have two questions, well, technically three. You've talked about directors that has influenced you. Okay, just one. Influenced you. Would you ever consider delving into directing, and what would the genre you prefer, or what kind of movie would you put out on screen?
It's a good one.
I don't know. I've thought about it, but not in the sense of like, oh, I feel the need to do it right now. I really love acting, and I love that relationship to the process of making films. I think being a director is really, really difficult. So I'm under no illusion where I'm like, oh, I think I could do that. I'm like, no, that's really difficult, and you probably can't do it. But when I work with these directors, I do always kind of keep a little mental like checklist of like things that they do that I like. I'm like, oh, this person did this, and I like that. So remember that just in case you ever do direct. And I think at the moment there's this fun thing where if I read something and there's not a director attached to it, then I like imagining like, oh, you know, I like this person's films, or I worked with this person and they might be a good fit to bring this to life. I think if there ever comes a time that I read something that doesn't have a director, I go, oh, I really know, something in me tells me that I know how to tell this story different or in a way that I feel I need to direct it. If that ever happens, then yeah, I will maybe hopefully try directing. But it's not something I'm like in a rush to do right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There is the girl at the back. I think I can see her. Yes. Stand up, please. Yes. I have to admit, I can't see very well.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
I'm doing good. My question is, what's your favorite memory on the set of Skins? Because it's like a comfort show for me. Like I watched it growing up, and yeah, I just wanted to know, what's your favorite memory there with everybody?
Oh, I've got so many great memories. We had a really good foosball competition behind the scenes. We had a foosball table, and like in between, we'd go in there and have like championships on that. But I think one of the most memorable moments of that was there's an episode where we're trying, Chris, Joe Dempsey's character, has died, and they won't let any of us go to the funeral. So we steal the coffin to have our own funeral. And there's a scene where we steal the coffin from the back of a hearse and then strap it to the top of a Mini Cooper. And then a chase ensues with the Mini Cooper and the hearse chasing it. And we didn't really close down the streets of Bristol to shoot that. So I was just driving this Mini with Mike Bailey in it and a camera with a coffin on top, with a hearse chasing us, flashing its lights, like honking its horn down Park Street, like one of the main streets in Bristol. And they weren't closed off. People looked like the public were just walking up and down. And I think that's why it's so memorable, because I could see people's faces seeing us go flying by. And they were just so confused by what the scenario was, of what was going on. Because it wasn't clear that we were filming anything. It was just like a Mini with a coffin on top being chased by a hearse. So that would be one of the most bizarre things I've probably done in my life, and probably one of the most memorable moments of that show.
Thank you.
Final question. Okay, here, the lady is very enthusiastic.
Hello. Okay, so first of all, you are a fantastic actor, and although you're young, I do consider you to be a veteran actor. And you have this long journey, very eclectic journey of all the different roles that you did. So being now in Saudi Arabia, this very young and fresh, budding cinema industry and world that's happening here, is there anything of being in this environment that reminds you of the early days when you realized that you fell in love with storytelling and the cinema?
Yeah, because I think there's an energy that comes with like the early on period or something. That's what's very exciting about the energy here. Like you said, there's an ability to, there's a creativity and there's a buzz around that, the energy of it, which is also like, I feel like at that point, there's not the fear of failure. And there's this thing where you just create and go, and that sparkles and that speaks to people. So there is something about the early days that reminds me of a little bit. And it's I read this thing the other day that this isn't completely related to your question, but I read something that Roger Federer, of all the professional points he ever played in tennis, he only won 54% of them. So he only won just over half of all the points he ever won. But he's one of the greatest tennis players of all time and won however many Grand Slams. And it's really interesting, that mental idea of like, you're always gonna lose, you're always gonna fail. But to create, to be great, to follow your passion, whatever it is, you just have to you have to keep going, get back up, do it again, but also like not quit and give it your all. And I found that so interesting, because that's like the same in acting and in making movies. It's like, it's not always going to go your way. Like for directors, a lot of the time, it's like they're putting out fires. It's like they've got this vision of what this movie should be when they start, but then along the way, that gets completely turned into something different, because like, well, we can't shoot here, we can't do this isn't available. How can you tell this story that you want to tell still under the confines of what's happening? So I don't know, that's what's really, really fun about making movies. And just, yeah, the passion of new creative energy is special to be around that.
There's definitely that here in Saudi, the creative energy. Thank you for finishing on that note, and thank you for the great conversation.
Hey,